How should say low jump to some
So, with the weather like this, maybe it might prove a little bit difficult to train the mind.
China Corona to a strang at him at the Jimena. Tana was a logic to Jim at this situation, and DJ the land to attend it. The legal and carry to it. None in the rest.
I'm mindful of the fact that there were some questions that we didn't pick up in the last session, but due to time constraint, let us move on with the root text itself first, and then please be assured that I will pick up the questions later on when we have the time.
That logic to China Shiloka Jidamundra, and the day again, I remember you to do this to the other session.
Yes.
China Chupa this Tsongkhapa.
Tsongkhapa.
And about the consular diomara.
Tsongkhapa.
Shamba Kundu to the Pemuda. The Chasa doesn't end, the now la Palung and the name Toto Giltishora.
So now, as we look at this particular text, 8 verses of training the mind, then it's a very short text comprised of only 8 verses. Now, with that being said, there are many different commentaries on this particular text because it's a very famous text. And for example, there is a particularly detailed commentary on this particular text by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which is very long and it cites a lot of different textual sources. So for the purposes of our discussions, we will try to look at a more comprehensive commentary.
Like Danny, she knew Danny Simjet Hamji Asra. That's also the Katan of Chamashi Ludi, so Zawachaway, but I tend you Milila Chidosara, and then Chitigala. Danny Simjet Hamjila, the Suzu Lieutenant Isra, Simjet Hamjila, that Majin Roy, Simjet Hajila Asra. That's all the colors now. Chitanga to Yishin Nobule, the Gundu Karine, Tetungangela shower, Ra, Yishin Nobule. Chitanga Jasuna Nobula and Nobudana Lava Yuvaina, Susula Goya in the Bakari Yuvaina, Tuzun Subaragi, she's Zigur, that the Pesha didn't ra. Chesa didn't and Danis Simjet Hamji last, Yishin Nobule happy, Ladigala, Yishin Nobuna, Gundu Tamaragi, indigent doing Yalajre, Naya Tagana Shiki, Simjet Hansi, Simji Real Contuni, Dotosina, Simji in the Bakari, Dita Contuni, yes. Yishing noble Nashi Tela Hapachi, that's Tsunandigora. The day in Digala, that candidate and the Turkashin, Tenshu Drubi somebody is there are. And the day that Tabata Tancha Masajo Koma Karishan and Digitura, Shen Pagila Chiki, Kula, Tende Midi, and a Ropado in a Carita, Goyag in Deva continue there. Tenshu Drubi somebody is, then gender do somebody extra. Ani Tad Chibans of Bashos. Then you do that, then they keep Chipuchi Maimban, do that, ra, near that sand that Loda Dawa Mutuman. Then they Chipper Chibans of Alatigala Pagila, Shamjondo, Tendela, ra. Then they get any Zebig Luchi or Sholes, ra.
So then it starts in this manner. By thinking of all sentient beings as more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, for accomplishing the highest aim, I will always hold them dear. So if we refer back to our discussions about bodhicitta, we talked about the importance of cultivating an attitude which holds all sentient beings as our mothers. So now herein, one is advised to cultivate an attitude in your spiritual practice to cherish all sentient beings as being precious. And the example or the metaphor that is being used here is sentient beings should be cherished as more precious than even a wish-fulfilling jewel. So a wish-fulfilling jewel, when we look at the Buddhist myths, then a wish-fulfilling jewel is understood to be a supreme form of treasure which grants all our forms of wishes and aspirations. So in our spiritual practice, we should be able to cultivate an attitude which cherishes sentient beings as even more precious than such a wish-granting jewel. Why? Now the third the third line says, for accomplishing the highest aim. So the highest aim herein refers to liberation and enlightenment. So for the purposes of achieving enlightenment and liberation, we should be able to cultivate an attitude which cherishes sentient beings as even more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. And this kind of attitude of cherishing sentient beings should not be generated in instances and bits, but throughout all facets and phases of your spiritual practice as well as path, one should cultivate such an attitude. Yes.
자지 따르지만 대초를 되가 사제 고발을 보 지당이 신디 코라는 날더라 메진다기 있어 치다라 양사 그래서 치다라 양 랑와 다기 니스 유심전 탕지라스 때네 이신지 노불리 장 제일 하바스 대초도 두바 자냥비 삼바이스 제라 되네 가서 대초도 집어기 삼바이스 거네 한테 마게 심전 탐지 따드스 제번 잡으셔 마게 심전 탐지 심전 탐지 들라디가라 마진 로드 심전 탐지 라스라 텔레 대초도 집어 사제지 고파서 대초래도 사제지 고파이 라스 대심제 텔레 때네 두고베다 텐데 마지 심전 때 심제 텔레 때네 두고 두도 예베스 심제네서 이신지 노블이 나츠라 자나자야도 심제들라 라니게 칼로 더 사제가 고바토야 변나 사제가 고바토야 딱 나도 대두치 중앙에 제스젤 때는 중앙에 라주라 나츠라 자나자야 있어라.
So herein when we look at the relationship between cultivating such an attitude which cherishes sentient beings as precious for the purpose of accomplishing the highest aim, then we need to appreciate the relationship between achieving the ultimate goal of enlightenment, and for that purpose how sentient beings are important and how they are related and complementary to each other in a sense. So as we already discussed, that with the awakening mind, the purpose of achieving enlightenment is to alleviate the sufferings of sentient beings. And similarly, if we are to achieve the ultimate goal of enlightenment, then we cannot do without being of service and being of benefit to sentient beings. So as such, these two are complementary. Yes.
그래서 다데 말이 젠데들 쳐라지라 다기 대화 참 젠둥에 가서 대화한테 발을 때는 중얼래 뜻도 대화에서라 다이나 단다디 샤시 다디올 시간들 가라나 간다 스타 트로비체스라라 가서 내가 사차 가와도이나래 아니 스다 트로보 스투이나래스라 간다 스타 트로비체스 다니고를 메다시 다라니 사차 가와사지 칼치게 메 초바에서 메 겔은 냠도에나 타나 미칭이면도 메서이나 가와도바이나라 라니 메서소야 다니 걸 메다 신이라디야 소소래야 통주체와다 치수체와다 말이라 멤버 아니 젤라 상바 타바이 소소 가르 켜상로지나 젤라 마티도야 라 지디사이나 메신라 야티도야 지 가린 사야도야 가린의 젤라 저처체 근데 조레스 근데 초드지만 근데 길로지체 쇼라치라 다디 가르셔올라나 근데서 가시게 라이다 셴라 쉬우지도에나 소소를 총라기도 있어 근데 아니 소소소를 녀지 땅데 인도지 자기도 상구다 이내 잠도 근데 채워이나 나이 쉬부지 인사에 가제주라 디만 내라 펜토가서라 소소라는 라시기만 메서 조이나 미파이에 출라 지야다 들리고라 소소 쉬부인도 제 쉬부지 버셔 타고서는 미파슈에 가고 말아 근데 파야 보지는 저야 보지 라시닌자 야보차기 근데 지지 차기도 메시 소소라야 소소소라 통주도 치즈다야다 소소소라 자외 봤어지 말라.
So then moving on, verse number 2. Whenever I am in the company of others, I will regard myself as the lowest among all, and from the depths of my heart, cherish others as supreme. Now, this talks about cultivating an attitude of humility, and it is important to understand humility in its proper context. We might get the impression that when we read such a line which says, whenever I am in the company of others, I will consider myself, I will regard myself as the lowest among all, then maybe one might get the impression that this kind of sounds like being condescending towards oneself, putting oneself down, But this is not what we mean. This is in effect a tool to help us to cultivate an attitude of humility in order to combat any sense of arrogance we might develop with regards to our spiritual practice as well as our daily lives. So think about the ramification or the implication of developing such an attitude of humility as opposed to an attitude which is self-centered and arrogant. And when we are self-centered and arrogant and full of ourselves, then the interactions, the relationships that we build are not effective, meaningful, and then we do not really develop trust, faith, concern for each other. If we ourselves are able to, from the outset, approach our interactions with others with a sense of humility, then there is trust, faith, respect, and so forth to grow in such a relationship. So this is what we mean.
Tadi odla kharte dana chulam kunda raju la asra toji nyomo chimata dashe maru chepelis sende done dobarchas tadin la dugala ta chulam kunda susu khawa doine khawa dewaina ra ta susu gi nye na rona de na sana tuna ngonzo sanlo tanda ji susu gi rota de ta lunga gi cheba ji ra tinde gi cheba dis la ta da susu ta na chulam kunda raju la to jins la digala peji ta pa che to cheba che ra to jins 아니 딘데 수수 따지 지되는 수수를 찍로 마룬 바다 내가 마룬하다 산노 마룬하지 코운데 가서 랑서 태우다 어 당하데 디마 소사이티 태우라 딘데 아니 수수 내가 두제진 따지 제는 디기 말해서 랑서파 가바 되고 해주라 딘데 이제마 타스 아니 수수 제와 있나 무기 지기나래 가르치디 주고 있나 딘데 일로 마룬 바지 제 um마 타데 아니 젠데비 람서 따든 디마서 랑서파 까투야 라다 캐머디 두자이나이 치샤고서 드네 많이 봐. 토양다 치스 마다 봐라. 젠터지네 파 돈도네 파 근데 내가 말은 바리 파 까고 예스.
So moving on, verse number 3. In my every action I will watch my mind, and the moment destructive emotions arise, I will confront them strongly and avert them, since they will hurt both me and others. So herein, destructive emotions refers to the afflictions, and now in my every action I will watch my mind, I will observe my mind, and the moment the destructive emotions arise, I will confront them strongly and avert them, since they will hurt both me and others. So herein one is encouraged to not be complacent and negligent when these afflictions arise within us, and to be always mindful of our actions to ensure that they are not influenced by the afflictions. Because the fourth line, since they will harm both me and others. So the normally we have become too habituated, too familiar with our negative emotions, and we do not really pay any mind to them the moment these arise. And when we are negligent, then these destructive emotions inadvertently influence our actions, and this hurts both ourselves and others. So the moment we begin to realize that certain negative emotions is arising in us, we're advised to confront them right there and then, and to be able to avert them, to be able to restrain from not engaging in actions that are influenced by these negative emotions. Thus.
You might do your doom. Because Miji Chitangi so similar Taji cheating Gisara. You might go catch in the Kumakoya Dakala, Jagaji Chawatsam Gesa. Takumakas and Lapa and Veton, Taco de dreams, Coral Lapa singing, Kumaleson and the Kijalaja. This Susan
The Geshe Bengunchin like the mother. Nima
Ah.
Chakwache, any Dijela, any
same Taji to change. This is a bit did that. That one Gombe Chishu, Namsa or Deepa Kagus, Korakora Lavan, the Korakija, Tindichu. Takadu in a Narazu long image shown of Chijimis and Kaya the kitchen.
So there is a particular anecdote, and it comes from a historical spiritual figure in Tibet called Geshe Benguinken. Now, before he became a spiritual practitioner, he was actually a bandit, and but later he turned his life around, and then he became a spiritual adept. And it is said that he really kind of followed these kind of trainings of observing the mind and confronting the negative emotions right there and then when it arises. So it is said that at one point in the initial stages of his practice, since he was used to being a bandit, then the thought and the tendency arose in him one day to kind of steal something. And then just as he was about to reach his hand out, then immediately he began to grab his hand and begin to shout, "There's a thief here, there's a thief here." Yes.
Rushing in business, Tangas the Subocom say you do that, that's a chodra. Rushing in business, Tangas, any didu trappers, that's also Chiba rushing, Kachitsubuno, Kachizumasho, Mindram, Yorua, Tinde, any Chichigan Yambaki, Casa Dinas, any didu trapper, which says, that on a social Tonjucha, Chisicho, Tinde Napochi Vicena, Asra. Tila Carolina, and Renchet that they can't change chatting or Rashim Yabo Medical. Tinde with La Anichi, Renchet Teta, Chepa Tatters, Penami Upo Chobujile. Tindegi, any Chala and Tansabujano, Pegagra. Tinasigi, any Susu Tanga is Chizopocomsaina, Tindegi huge Tangalatana, Meba inaya, Tindegi Didu Tapo Ming Yambaji Tundugala, Tilangazo Gogon, and only chick, Sonam Sai, Shijirason Sai, Tindegi Gogon, listen, Penet Tatamati so they get the loss.
So then, moving on, verse number 4. Whenever I see ill-natured beings or those overwhelmed by heavy misdeeds or suffering, I will cherish them as something rare, as though I had found a priceless treasure. So think about this metaphor that is being used here, as though I had found a priceless treasure. And now, if someone is strived of wealth, material comfort, then if they come into a treasure, how precious would they look at that piece of treasure that they find? So similarly, when we find people who are engaging in negative deeds, who have bad habitual tendencies, or who are inflicting harm to others, then we should be able to look at them from the spiritual point of view as if you have found something priceless.
Si Korante la Carla Udilnara, you do count that you the two the Kana as a runde, Kandaji you the two that the Tanya that send and it's such a kawaii in the answer. Rundes, Ranshin Hind, Yembe, Mikashibe, Jobang, but the country sound down to some to the toyera. The day with Simjan Tas, Ani Teshenda, Tandu Dimage, Juba, Hachang, Zubo, Ra. Teshenda, Hachangi, Tsepchevis, and a debegi lila, Ra, Shuba. Tendita, Mr. Tajona, Takarin, the Chinura, teacher. Ani Dunge shoot tabu, Kashi in a bed. Dunge shuchambu nothing, right? Dunge taben base, tende nembi sera, Simjan nam tonses, tende simjit the Gangi general, Geshema Dawa, and is chicken color. Juba di dipele sapchambu chingi, tende simja tong dugala asra, Tadi Karchugulana, J Malupala, the Gonzo Lelo Majepa, Lamsahora. Pagi kula chiki rokpa chaya na tidi sensu tawa ta kari chaya na chukuri es. Pena ji malu para so ubu renche te tang sa chepa taras. Sasa mi upo ji saya toya mara rodi ni kangi ti tenye ji na kuki renche te jira na pe gagirwa. Rwa, nganzo yi na chi chu nyamne che sada chinde ji mara ki shiji la ya chi zoba gomsa yi na kula rokpa chaya yi na tinde ki shiji ra undu gala di nangshi ki renche upu ki renche te raba nangshi ki nganzo ki di chukuri lagdwa. Simchen dutta bunne shanchu dubi yala nye bar kawe. Chetan tende yu simchen ten nganzo ki yangsi yangsi tuya yu ma resra. Tende yi tu undu gala ani shanchu duba la ya tau chodu chuba yin sami. Ani tende raba la ya pe kale kabo re nyambe yi sa lasan nambar tabar chi goos. Tende ki chibar zang goos dra.
So herein, now we are touching upon our discussions about the importance of developing the resolve, the pure resolve, through the contemplation on the causes of the 7 precepts. And now, at all times and in all places, when we come into contact with ill-natured beings who engage in misdeeds or beings who are in suffering, then we should be we should not neglect them, or we should not become averse to them. We should not turn away from them. From a spiritual perspective, one should look at these people who are ill-natured, engaging in misdeeds, or are suffering as the perfect, offering us the perfect means to develop the awakening mind and to develop the resolve to be of service and to be of benefit for others. So as such, we should not turn away from these kind of beings and instead find it within ourselves to console them, to support them, to support them, to change their ways, to walk away from the causes of suffering and so forth.
Tadi shimbadi kalana dala shenji chado ki stanga jide na lo la chiro susu chiglega ya bodo jindu de wa da chong ina re ta la jo che ina re ta ching na mi ya bo shubu khamba de ya pusun so bara sha ya mi ka chado san yiro dala mi shinda ki sira chado sa yin ra chado ki is ta ko le mgawa karin zamza shishi tang ra zamza kurndo che ko ya pa ma chi ni la ne ya chi ko nda ba so ta meri ba khande ji che ba ina re ra chi bi tses te ko karala la kesi chi ta ta tende ji tu ne mi ki khadung da ta wa da chi duja la wa de la pa donle de khande che was na so so chora na ra ko ne ko karala na la ti chongkha de na ki ne ra ko la ji je kha de pa jen la bo che ko res la da.
So, verse number 5, whenever someone out of envy does me wrong by attacking or belittling me, I will take defeat upon myself and give the victory to others. So, in our lives, if we find people out of a sense of jealousy, envy begins to kind of attack you, hurt you, harm you, and so forth, then along our spiritual path, we should be able to look at these kind of seeming defeats as being superficial defeats, immediate, which have only immediate consequences, and as such, to not pay mind to these kind of attacks, and to be able to take this defeat upon ourselves and to offer victory to others. Bless.
다늘라 다디션 바디 먼저 쇼라 저 시람다 늘라 달라스 메신지스 타도기스 그는 하데 시신레데 시시 당와다 찬도레데 코라 쩐더 종데라 쩐 찬도와 당스 디신레데 돈데죠 거라 소바다 지 거주 당와라 지 약간라 소바 지 강에 첨부고 거라 소바치디 스 핸데 메리비스 네바 첨부스 진라시 지나양스 중세 장什么 들어봐 컨트롤 말라 하시더라 지단이 가족이 미 소소를 냐지시고 컨트롤라와 소소기 가르사다 창조가 되는지는 가족 가기 말아 라 들어봐 지 라쇼고르데 이내야 된데 마트로 하시는 컨트롤 말로 하시는 종카 탄제 랑기 셀렘바탄스 제카 탄제 젠다 보아쇼스 도나 카스나 제판지 쯔바 나사 판카랑글 계속 균이 제와다 판바에게 쯔바로 집에 디게나 판카드랑글레와다 제카드전을 보여치 그래서 란자라 지레지레다.
Yes. So herein we need to kind of relate to this to ourselves first, whether we ourselves are capable of developing such an attitude in being able to take victory, in being able to offer victory to others and take the loss upon ourselves. Now this is very difficult for us to do, especially in the case of someone attacking you, wherein you did not provoke the situation at all. So this is why we call it training the mind. Our minds are used to coveting victory for ourselves and then inflicting loss or harm upon others. So we have to be able to train our minds in the spiritual path to overcome such conceptions of wanting victory for ourselves and wanting victory for ourselves and inflicting harm or loss upon others. Now this ties into the point that we made about how spirituality means overcoming the narrow concerns that we have of gain, loss, fame, infamy, and so forth. So by reminding ourselves of such a slogan and trying to train our mind in this manner, then we can hopefully come to a place wherein we overcome these narrow ways of thinking about loss and gain, fame and infamy, and so forth.
지단 알아서 디버 선다운의 칼리카브로 짠 차이더라. 지단 제세 상주서 봐도 저기 쥐바 도저 라네 따도면 가서 카투 칼리카브로지다. 네야 지단 샘플 헬레도 이디가라 미기 질라나 초도. 자도 소소야 샘마 마시 텔라차오 딘데기 강이 되는 미기 뜻스무시 라사면다. 라. 남상가서 드릴 잡아서 남사 파자 되네. 데데오 가서 찍찍 치치 질라나 초고마 라. 딘데 이 남자 제는 가라서 지기서서 저거에 뺏게 참다.
So now, when we look at all of these verses and the practice that one is encouraged to inculcate, then at the outset, I am sure that many of us would agree that these practices are indeed very, very difficult to inculcate in our personal lives. But even though this might be the initial reaction, it is important to understand that even if it appears very difficult at the outset, we should be able to start from somewhere. Because and in order for us to start from somewhere, we need to first think about the normal way in which we react to these kind of situations, and how. Let's not even talk about big forms of losses that we experience. Let's talk about the simple example of a harsh word. It's just a small harsh word that is uttered to us, but our reaction sometimes is that of a snake being provoked. And we have such a almost excessive reaction towards these kind of provocations. So if we are able to kind of open our motivation to look at a text like this and to try to think about changing our response in this manner, then it can help us to overcome these kind of small instances of reactive tendencies we have. So if we are able to train our mind in this manner, then we can eventually be able to practice as these texts advises us.
Tadi wala chubadi kala da wala kanla da ki penta penda susu ki michila da meina susu puguina karina topoto karina ra susu pa penta sha ju pento chimbu chi sha ju la tabi se rewa chewa ka da susu ki michila pa yapo chena ani mau pa ga gego chana nga neba chana tsu susu ki chi rewa chesa yu chi nandu na ja ji da so de nge topo tu shubu jin chi rewa chesa ki meji nge ne ko pe yapo chi kangi ji tin ko na ta chi re sa me ji ra yapo chi ge sa ko dine maje che susu pa yapo mitsu kanza chi kaji yapo chewa ine jima tsula roba ji gudu gala ani hente miriba ra nyoba chewa tanda ye pento yala pa sha shi na ine pento go ra ine tsu nyoba chewa ta ani tende ji chewa ina ya tando kharala osna tila ganzo ganzo khone mal nge ko nge ma yapo che tari ko ngala duje chi du san tende sa ma yin para shenye tangba ta shi ra susu gewe shenye na shi tingala la zoba gonsa ke lamte chimbu jire she gewe shenye na shi pa susu thaba da than chi ko ba langa la thiye gi gewe shenye na shi jire sha sa ya ra shenye tangba ta shows tende ge lo ji ani che chi gu res ra.
So, moving on, verse number 6. Even when someone I have helped or in whom I've placed great hopes mistreats me very unjustly, I will view that person as a spiritual teacher. So when in our lives, when we find that the people whom we have helped the most and in whom we have a sense of expectation that since I have done all I can done all I can to help this person, then if I ever do find myself in need of any help, then this person will indeed help me. So we have an attitude like that this will be reciprocated, and we have a sense of expectation like that. So in situations like this, if we ever find it the case that these people never show any sense of gratitude and in its place treats you very unjustly, then it should not be the case in the cultivation of your spiritual practice to look at these people as ungrateful or unjust and so forth. As part of our spiritual practice, we should be able to look at these people as true spiritual teachers for affording us for giving us the most effective spiritual guidance there is that one needs.
Kyozo mitsu na le ende kangi ro tesel ra susu pa pe sa na chi digala sara lo pa chi di.
So have any of you experienced such things in your life wherein you kind of helped someone with the best of your intentions and maybe it wasn't really reciprocated in the same manner?
Somewhere in it. Yes? Yeah. Oh. Did you choose any color? Didn't go to the later. Casatana the
Shenye Tambalato.
Shinny Tambas, so they give him a red eye to take a look to that.
So what were your reactions like in those situations? Were you able to look at these people as your spiritual teachers? Only one time.
No, only with time. After a very long time. Not in the moment whatsoever.
테마탁도다 춘에 따투기면도스 이네다 투즈디스 주름보도나라 페제미제 된데기 따당도 지체투서레스. It might be the case that when these people didn't really reciprocate in a similar manner, then you really had you really reacted in a very emotional manner.
Yeah, then you see it. You were not too that can lie, Mara. 미기 오늘 지나게 다시는 파야 버치는 쓰야 버치 고야를 주라 딜레 마제니 줄라 도치온도 줄라 카드요 말에 이네 계시 든지 지와 있나 다시나 스 지나게 파야 버 지린지 츠 미기 츠 두제는 야지다 저런들 예망에 약버치 지진의 저런 론주 쇼제지 게 약버치거들 베 당가 두제지기도 사 지진은 저런라야 신진이 게 콜로 바 마제사이 근데 양로레 쓰라 디야미 교쇼로라 봐 아니 신이 담았다 맞네. 근데 페이지 가서 때데 요거를 무슨하노라. 근데 이때 딱 님마 근데 지유나 수수기네 주바자 나한테 지야데 디문도스라. 당가 마음 봐야 근데 마요야 지야다. 계시 근데 기간이 이치소나 니 교신이 걸로 따뜻다. 수수 냠유사지 차오라. 근데 로지라 가지고 그 된다데 만두바이나 수수라 냠유사에게 시지다. 아니 딘데기 칼로트 심지 딘데야 두아서 히지지스기 시로 차거라. 근데 그래서 사야데 베케체마 이사리.
So herein, when I ask these questions, that maybe you had a very emotional reaction to such a situation, then I'm not saying, it is not saying that such an emotional reaction is not justified. Of course, you are helpless in that moment. When you have such hopes and such expectations, when these hopes and expectations are not met, then it is normal to have an emotional reaction. Now, the point that is being made here is not that such an emotional reaction is not justified. The point that is being made is we begin to suffer as a consequence of that reaction. So maybe if we ever have such experiences, we have to learn from that experience. Not to say that, of course, naturally, the kind of reactions we have is to develop first, after that emotional reaction, a deep sense of regret. And then this deep sense of regret gives into an attitude which says, okay, I shouldn't ever really help him or her anymore. And as such, you begin to kind of look at all the other relationships in a similar manner, wherein you say that, okay, this really put me in a place of deep regret, so I won't ever help anyone anymore. Maybe this is not the attitude to cultivate or the attitude to adopt. The point that is being made here in this is to learn from that experience, to reframe our responses better. When such a situation arises in the future. So, not to first project all our hopes and expectations onto situations and relationships, one. Two, not to engage in an act of kindness with a sense of it being reciprocated. And even if you do have such hopes, then if such situations indeed come in the future, then not to kind of look at that person as in this manner, but to look at it as an experience which gives you a spiritual lesson, and to look at that person as a spiritual teacher.
지당한 저기 지 밀라 로바 체와이나레 젬바 땅와이나레 카달 합제 체와이나레 지 답변에 보고 질럽던도 들라 람데로 제처럼 되는 지메 람데 체와이나레 미지기 내가 체는 저런 람데 체와이나레 저런 로바 체 가지고 거라 로바 지 지투 투야기 니바이레 저런 미셰발레 메비 소소데 제주 마무지라 뒤뒤 집이 내가 라이 저런 로바 지에디 사선 넘버 타베 코로나 폐기 치드마도 니코다 다리지 람데 치와이나 마음바코 야부차는 가르치 치기르서네 봐 마음바코 편지 슈부차는 가는 니테르 마음바코 내가 야부차는 가라 니가다 니부다 카레나 코사라서 근데 이거도 레와지 집이가네 바로 바체와이나 로바드 타선 난다르지 레디오 말라 수수 캐베치 있다디니도 저라 근데 마타와 치네 파기라 지 삼바 히 탁바니 파기라 고 강이들라 아니 람데 약보다야 시라 대땅 사디가라 주마처럼 미디기 처럼 야 맞아와다 아니 단도 약보 제지사라 두자로 채와이나 결론을 줘봐요 말 가슴 처럼 꼴로 남바타면 콜라 폐하기 치들라를 마시 그 레도 루에기 치들라야 말아 근데 이 아니 마음바 줘봐지기 말아 진짜 가서 팔라로 받치는 담분들 레도 맞아야 시리 진짜라 대야이나래 소소기 지글레가 가르쳐와이나 파기 미드살 지지 라그레 터그레 고사라기 된데서 마산 집이고는 제토는 빼야보다.
So this is the reason why we talked about the importance of the scope of motivation and the integrity of that motivation and how it affects and determines our experiences in the face of adverse situations. So in Buddhism, we place a lot of importance on the intention and to ensuring that whatever action we undertake, that we undertake it with a pure intention. So, for example, with regards to acts of kindness in the form of generosity, in the form of offering emotional support to others, in the form of offering career guidance, financial guidance to someone, helping someone, in any form of acts of kindness, we must as spiritual practitioners, ensure that these actions are informed by a pure motivation which does not expect something in return. If our motivations in engaging in such actions are influenced by these kind of concerns, then it's not really coming from a place of kindness, compassion, and so forth. It's coming from a place of selfish concern, that you expect something in return for yourself. And if we expect something in return for ourselves, then we are, whether we agree on, we are in effect placing ourselves to face disappointment and regret later on when these expectations and hopes that we place in situations and relationships are not met. Now, in its place, as spiritual practitioners, we should be able to develop a pure intention with regards to whatever we engage in, any kind of acts of kindness. If we are able to do that, then we are not concerned about receiving anything in return. So, as such, we are free from the dangers of being disappointed, becoming regretful later on, because our intentions ensures that even if the person does not reciprocate in a similar manner, our intentions are pure. So as such, we do not have such a emotional reaction to these kind of situations.
다다기 치들랭이 저한테 추즈랭이 내 강에 주니야 참아 유일한 자자도 shumaya juma gazu thura tidugala ne chungsara 강에로 주는 조마서 디치디 자네 치나니 예 로바 카르치와 이나래 수수그래와 레토 미비갈 치디갈 짱마짱자라 tidingala 강에 치 트마서 라야 바치 서로치 치라.
So now, as I asked you the question before, that did you find yourself in these kind of situations, and you had such an emotional reaction to these kind of situations? Then almost all of us said yes. So now, as you have studied these texts and studied these texts, and now we have the tools to kind of contemplate on this, to better reframe our responses, then if in the future you come here again and I ask you the same question again, maybe it should be the case that even if you did find yourself in a similar situation again, that you did not have the same reaction to these situations.
지상한테 실로라 내가 제안을 가도이나 근데 단도 전화들 감 마부투도 마음바에 투에라 투에기 그 지기 칼로다 라시로지라 근데 이디가라니 산타에 뺏기죠. 디 직딩간주 장차디가라 디가라 산타 나와데 이거를 담문 파 내가 지디가라느라 천지치는 아니 배워라.
So this is very practical for us to better manage our expectations, the manner in which we project our own personal sense of expectations onto situations, relationships, and so forth. Because as all of us say that we have faced such situations, and it is guaranteed that there are more of these situations that we are yet to face. It is guaranteed. So maybe as we have studied this text, then we have something to contemplate on at this point. And we should ensure that this contemplation helps us to better reframe our responses if these situations arise again in our lives.
다 단다 딜레 템베게 디짜시 딜레 칼나 딜라 던들라스 카치와 쳔베게 가르손다나라 펜다 랜드 뉴춘지 파 펜바지 펜생이 레가지 제유네 들르스 뉴춘와이나 양레 니제 곰바차스 다 가서나 파 밀라 펜지다는 치르 뉴바치와이나 되게 파 랜드레 니제 곰고레스라 니제 쳔부 곰라다 양레 니제 쳔부 곰라네 지간이 뭐더든데 되는다.
So, in short, if we have helped someone and they do not reciprocate in a similar manner, even if it is the case that they harm us instead of showing a sense of gratitude, then we should be able to repeatedly generate compassion and love for such people in our lives.
다들 제슬랄레 소대바나 가르손다네 야느라다 다기 표신 찌바라 짱나에 소소기 분나셔라 소소기 바 부글라디 땅안저 가르 요야 예나면서 제지면은 모두 지라 라 다기 표신 찌바라 짱바 미스 소소 짱샤주 미디스 달라 tsura drashin tawa ra 달라 drashin tawa chena yas sosola dranashi tsutagi yuna yas tandu tula pa khole malojan shambi wangi sa laya tenilas soso shanji je da mate goni tandu para tenila khala yende jiba jese lale sra chida migi soso paya bo chin tsuduja chen takko ngenge ma pa awoje ta pe duja lana ga duja shi shora koti man je tandu dile dode yende shia chida nandu ko paya bo re chi sama zamba tari kote lu la inji ro chikure tandu e tora ta ja de jizo to la da yende jiba de ani jese shanji samba to ga lale ta lale de ke to res la.
So, related to this particular verse, in another mind training text called the 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva, there is a particular verse which reads along the lines of, even if someone who I have cherished and nurtured like a son, if they look at me as an enemy, then generating love and compassion for them and speaking of their good qualities is the practice of a bodhisattva. So if we are being honest with ourselves, this is very, very difficult for us to do.
Ngus chebainare, shule chebainare, jene chebainara. Dona ngusa jibais, pende, pembada dewadi, manam columbusra. Susuta, majisum jetacha katonga drosara, tinde and mala pambua tans. My nuda, that's also majisum jetaji dungedi, ra, nubata, dungeko, ani sawe dalama. That's our lago, the jinsiji sara. Tinde chinganzo.
So moving on, verse number 7. In brief, directly or indirectly, I will offer help and happiness to all my mothers and secretly take upon myself all their hurt and suffering. So, through any means necessary, directly or indirectly, I will offer help and happiness to all my mothers. All my mothers herein, as we discussed, referring to all sentient beings. Bless.
Tala dila korang tsinde tala konda chike shepi isa sheba nam dorduna ngo sam te sa tatarang la sa yoba am te mechang sa jiba yi sa goni jora chewe sa pende malupa sa manako la sa mboshin isla da mai sa mai te so tam amagela ra magen nam chi is je la yubi is je ne batans debu dunge ko sawe dala la wa dasra go ne go tat pe shema na la sawa la go de kharchil la rusna dinde wi jegi dunge ro ni ta dala dara ge dunge de pa sele te dinde lo to che khabo is ra dinde gi gala ani dinde gi nyamne che wa ina 가시기다 세수 차다죠. 지 다 상세 레 담보 어로진 근데 제도고마라. 다 상세 상주 셈바베도 거라 칼로다 사사터 사주도 근데기 제도고라. 제정가도 코도게 근데 지야 근데 제도서 말하잖아요. 나 세수 차도 있어. 근데 이제 미틀에 소소기다 쇼 전도도 제고에서 말아. 냠내도 제대와 있네.
So herein, in brief, directly or indirectly, I will offer help and happiness to all my mothers. So in brief, herein summarizes the discussion of all the previous verses, and directly and indirectly we can understand it from one perspective through all possible means. Now, through all possible means herein refers to through our actions, if we are able to directly help them through our actions. And then if we are not able to directly help them, then indirectly we generate within ourselves the aspiration to be of service to them in our prayers. So directly or indirectly, I will offer help and happiness to all my mothers and secretly take upon myself all their hurt and suffering. Now herein, why does it exactly say secretly take it upon ourselves, all their hurt and suffering? So this takes into account the difficulty of cultivating such a practice. Because it is the case that only a seasoned practitioner can effectively pursue such a practice. As beginners, it is very, very difficult to effectively practice this. So as such, we as beginners are not encouraged not to make a show out of such practices, because if we make a show out of such practices, then we feel that we may have to live up to a certain standard, and then certain standard in front of other people's eyes, and then we become discouraged, demotivated when we feel that we are not able to meet such standards. So as such, as beginners in the training of becoming a bodhisattva, one is encouraged to cultivate these practices in secret.
미카시 엔드도 수수지 로바체와이나레 지 젬바타와이나 수수기 민다도 먹어야지 제 지도 오르더라 근데 카시 엔드레도 지 신데로 피니 미티 몰레다 라 수수 민타 뭐코기 동표제데 지지지르니 레 먹어야지 근데 진이도 대사 시소는 예예더라 아니 미카시기 그것을 로바체면도나야 파기 주베고네야 네바다 평안로다 근데 레 로바체도 오라 근데 이따 가서 주바이 아니 파밀라
So now practically we can begin to think about this verse in this manner, that directly or indirectly can be understood practically in this manner. For example, in the example of practicing generosity, it is the case that some people directly donate money to a cause, and secretly some people do not want their names to be announced as the donor. So this is the kind of practice that is encouraged. And then indirectly, even though some people are not able to contribute money directly to the cause, then they volunteer to offer their services and help. So this could be understood in this context too. Yes.
다시 look 제바디 가서나 나를 딜라다 대다 건자 취지지 있으라 단 지대 취지라죠. 지대 취지 뜨나 가와. 뜨나 라라 뜨나 가와. 라 라라 셀라 뜨나야 마가와. 라 아니 라라 니바 추나 가와. 셀라 니바 추나 뭐 톱니 아니 카르다티 지지 타다 튀기. 니바 추와다. 뜨라 추와다. 아니 카르스
아니 니엔다 타르레드라
땀다 잡아 잡아라니를 주는 가와 셀라 잡아 주는 마가와 라 다텐데기 취지지야 따따 재입니다
This sure thing is
지대 취지 Tendegi and the topet to me my he so topet to me my chuji chuna jima shibi lu
Deda midi.
Tunagawa Mina Tebega Middle Madam Chief says Tunagawa Pina Magawa Niba Chunagawa Niba Majuna Magawa and
Deda midi.
ah
Deda midi.
oh de watch Ranila Dewachunagawa and Zela Dewachunamagawa Ranila Dungichuna Gagmara Zela Dungichunagawa Tendegi Chiji Ra Tetako Chuji is Topa Tendegi Topang Yembegi Timegi Mababa Timegi Mangopa Mangushi is 다 가르사 올라나 가전 디나라 아다이가 저 동반이라 동저주로 실리다 쳐나 주마시빌 쳐탐지 아니 라시기 마두바 덴버투바메 주말에 내가 저 뚜베기 중장제도 지라 배나가 저기 디야 랑보치 따티불라 따따 생이나로 따따가 저 칸데 매직 렌저라 그래서 라 먼저 잠자디 야이 멜라테는 두디게라 뚜구도 뭐네 시네 저마인 하마가라 근데도 최탐쟁아 저 라시 유튜브에 지만나시 근데 11료스라 아니 춘나 지마 11료 셰미 따들 덴버투베 셴바데 메바 라 셰미 근데 셴바 메바 인자 아니 디 친월레 토아 디 나도 셴바 있는 데라 당와라고 칼로디 로티네 번주네 티네 지샤고라 근데 아니 친월레 토어 쇼스레
Now the last verse. I will learn to keep all these practices untainted by thoughts of the 8 worldly concerns. May I recognize all things as like illusions and without attachment gain freedom from bondage. So all of these practices that are specified up to this point should be, as spiritual practitioners, be free from what we call the 8 worldly concerns. So the 8 worldly concerns are the concerns of praise, blame, fame, infamy, gain and loss, pain and pleasure. And it is important to understand the manner in which we relate to these concerns. So if we ourselves are, the 8 worldly concerns or the 8 worldly dharmas are praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and infamy, pleasure and pain. So it is important to first understand the manner in which we relate to these concerns. For example, if we ourselves are praised, we are happy. But if someone who we do not like is praised, we are not so happy. If we are blamed, we are not happy. If someone we do not like is blamed, then we are happy. So similarly, we have the same reaction to each of these 8 concerns. When it happens to us, at one point we are happy. When the other thing happens to us, we are not happy. When the same thing happens to someone we do not like, we are happy. So these are the kind of manner in which we relate to the world and what we pursue in this world, because it is informed by these kind of concerns all the time. So our spiritual practices should not be tainted by these kind of 8 worldly concerns. The 8 worldly concerns are, first, praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and infamy, pleasure and pain. So then moving on, may I recognize all things as like illusions and without attachment gain freedom from bondage. Now this is tying into our discussions about emptiness. May I recognize all things, all phenomena as like illusions. So we talk about how the ultimate reality of things is that they lack inherent existence. Now, but they do not appear as having as lacking inherent existence, and we think that they exist as it appears. So look at this. We think that it exists as it appears. So we use the metaphor of illusions. So like a magician's illusions, the illusion that a magician conjures looks as if it exists like it appears. But when we begin to investigate it, it doesn't exist like it appears. So all phenomena, the manner in which we perceive it, it seems to exist as it appears. So may I recognize all things as illusions, as not having any inherent existence, and without attachment. Now, as a translator, I would say it's not really attachment, but conception. Without any conception, gain freedom from bondage. Bondage herein refers to samsaric bondage. Okay, so we stop here and break for tea and gather again in half an hour.